Alright, welcome everybody to another mixing video, or in this case, a mastering video. It was requested of me to do a video on mastering, and I just want to start by saying that I'm not a mastering engineer. I don't claim to be that. It is a very technical and specified skill set. So occasionally I do some mastering, but I'm more into mixing. So this is a mix that I've been working on. It's not perfect. The original tracks that I got, the bass guitar had some digital clipping from the start, so there is a little bit of that grittiness there. So this is one of those cases where you can never get it perfect if the day that you tracked it wasn't right to begin with. So I tried to make the mix sound as good as I could, and now we're gonna master it. And generally, for me, when I do a mix, I try and get it sounding as close to something on the radio as possible, and then just bring the level up at the end. But really, mastering should be a separate process. So that's what I did here in this case. I mixed it, kept it at a very conservative level, and then bounced it and brought it up in a new project, and now I'm going to master it. And the other thing I have to say about this is, generally, you shouldn't master something that you mixed yourself. You should have somebody else do it because they're hearing the song fresh for the first time and they don't have any sort of biased opinions about things or anything like that. So, that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So, the first thing I do is I usually bring up some sort of EQ, and I'm going to bring up the HEQ. So first off, let's just listen to the song, and then we'll decide what kind of EQ moves we want to make. Okay, so that's enough for me to kind of hear a few things here. So, I can hear that there's a lot of rumbly low end. There's definitely something going on in the low mids that I don't like. And it's a little bit too bright on the top end even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to mid-side mode. And I don't always do this, but it can be a really great trick for something like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the sides, and I'll just solo the sides, and I'll make some EQ moves, and then we'll talk about them afterwards. Okay, so let's just talk about this. So you can see the green line here is the side, and this orange line is the mid. So just to get a better look, let's talk about the side first. So first off, I used a high pass filter all the way up to 153 because I don't really want any of that low end stuff on the sides because it just muddies things up. And to me, this EQ move right here alone really cleans up the mix. From there, I was trying to find a frequency in there that I could cut, but I just figured I'm already high passing there, so I'll just turn that frequency band off. Went up to about 500 and cut some of that out because that's almost always muddy. And the thing about EQ moves on when you're mastering is you want to do like half a dB to maybe 1.5 dB at the most, because it can really start to radically change the sound. So I almost never go all the way up to like 2 dB of a change. Generally half a dB to 1.5. Okay, so moving on, the mid-band frequency here around 1K. I took some of that out because I wanted to get a little bit of separation from the sides and the mid. And this will help the vocal out in the center. Since the vocal is on the sides because of the slap delay that I have there, this will really give a separation from that delay and the actual vocal in the center. That's why I did that. And I did the same thing here for the 3.5K here, just to give a little bit more separation from the sides and the center. Then a little high shelf at 8K, just to give it a little more brightness on the sides. Then in the center, high pass up to 21. And the reason I choose these different types of EQ models is just to get a different kind of curve. So you can see if I switch between these, you can get different types of curves, right? So I like this EQ curve here for Digital 1 for high passing in the center. Then to help the low end out a little bit, I went to the fundamental of the kick, which is about 60 hertz, boosted that about a dB. Heard some of the buzzy nastiness of the bass at like the bass guitar here at 200. So I cut about 1.25 dB out of that. Once again, cutting out some of the 500 muddiness. So 200 and 500, that's pretty muddy. Boosted some of the 200, because if you remember on the sides, I cut just below that and just above that. I cut out 1K and I cut out 3K. So I boosted some 2K, and that really helped it out. As far as the high filter, or the high frequencies, I just turned that off because I wasn't going to use it. And then to kind of tame some of that high end in the center, I used a low pass filter, excuse me, at 16K, and that really helped clean things up. And it also separated the center from the side as well. So as you could hear, I bypassed the effect, and to me, that really cleaned it up. So I'm gonna start back from the beginning of the song here, and what I'm going to add next is a noise reduction plugin to kind of get rid of some of the hiss from the analog emulated plugins that I used during the mix down of this. So I love the analog plugins, but sometimes the hiss can be too much. So I'm just gonna kind of clean that up a little bit here with this plugin. So let's check that out. Listen to the information on the sides in particular. So you could see there, just watch the little bit of silence here before the track starts. Just watch how much reduction is happening there. Minus 40. That's how much noise it's reducing. That's crazy. So this really helps clean it up. So a lot of things in mastering is either making subtle little boosts to enhance something, or you're trying to clean things up. So that's what I'm going to do with this next plugin also. And this is also something that I don't always do. This is multi-band compression, and the only reason I'm doing this is because I want to tame that low end a little bit and also some of that high end. Sometimes you could get some nice energy from compressing the mid bands, but I think that I already handled the mid frequencies pretty well with the EQ, and as well as during the actual mixing phase of this. So what I'm actually going to do is, I think there's a preset in here that I liked. Not seeing it. Anyway, on any note, I'm gonna bypass these frequencies here, and I only want it to reduce a little bit, so I'm gonna change this range here to about 2 dB. And the reason I'm doing this is just to tame it, but the reason I'm not doing the whole frequency range is because I already used some compression in the mix down of this, quite a bit actually. So I'm gonna bring this all the way up to this, like as far as it goes, actually 250. And as far as this high frequency, I'm gonna come down to, well, let's say about, we'll go about, yeah, maybe about 11. It was okay where it was at. And I'm just gonna get subtle compression here just to clean things up. Okay, so I like what that's doing. But like I said, sometimes I'll put just a regular compressor on there. It doesn't need to be multi-band. But for this case, I just wanted to control the low and high end. So usually right here, what I'll put is an imaging, some sort of imaging plugin. And my favorite one is the isotope one, ozone. And I actually used this during the mix, but just to show you my general settings here. So the thing about this too is I would approach this differently if this was something sent to me from somebody else, but I already mixed this myself, so the approach is semi-different. But these are all tricks that you can use in your own mastering. There's no one way to do it, but generally you want to clean things up and just subtly enhance them. So let's work with the imaging. So to me, that's also cleaning things up. These are almost the exact same moves that I did during the mix down, but to me, even doing it again helps even tighten things up a little bit more. So this is a great tool because this low end can really get out of hand, and especially with this track, the low end was a little bit hard to deal with because of that clipping bass. So this is a great tool. Moving on, I used this during the mixdown as well, but to me, I don't really see a problem with using it again. So I'll just get rid of all the noise in this tape. So this is the virtual tape machines. This is a wonderful tape emulation. And I like using 15 IPS because it gets sort of a high-end roll-off, which will sort of help contain that the high frequencies that was kind of out of hand before. It gives a low bump in a very nice way. So it also helps your low end. It tightens it up, glues things together, and it just keeps things nice and fat and kind of helps balance your frequencies a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this input to make it hit around 0 dB here on the meter. And this is going to add some harmonics. So you don't have to necessarily use a tape emulation, but just any kind of plugin that'll give you some harmonic saturation is really great in mastering. It'll give it some color, and these kind of things will be what makes your master sound different than someone else's. Because generally a real mastering engineer is going to be running through lots of different hardware, and their hardware is going to impart a color that is unique from anyone else's. So that's why certain mastering engineers have their own unique sound, as well as the techniques that they use. But the gear does, especially in the actual hardware world, because each circuit is different. Even if it's two the same units, they're going to react differently. So that's kind of putting a sonic character that is unique to that person. So let's check this out, and we'll talk a little bit more after. Okay, so to me, the harmonics of this just really brought that vocal forward. It tightened everything up. And like I said, I used this during the mix down, but even though there was already tape sounds on every single individual track, as well as the mix bus, adding this during the mastering phase just brought it to life. This is one of my all-time favorite plugins, and if you can get it, go get your hands on it as soon as possible because this thing is great for mixing and mastering. And this does happen in the real world sometimes too. Even though tape was used in one studio, they might want to transfer it to another tape or something like that. And the great thing about this is you don't have to have the hiss. You're just getting the sound of the great tape machines. I could even try using a different tape type than I used during the mixdown, but I think for this song, this older tape kind of gives it more of a vintage character. And the reason I didn't use the 2-inch 16 track is because obviously this is a 2-track, as you can see, since it's a stereo 2-track. So the final thing that I use is some sort of level plugin. And I say level plugin because generally you would use a limiter, but the FGX actually is not a limiter. For the sake of this video, I will call it a limiter because it's just more what I'm used to saying. But this is not a limiter, but it does bring the level up in a great way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage this constant gain monitoring button here. And what that does is even though we're going to be adding like 10 dB or more of gain to this song, it will maintain the original volume so that way we can A/B everything and really not be fooled by the volume. So I'm actually going to start this from the beginning one last time. Maybe not one last time, because at the end we're going to A/B everything. And I'll dial this in. And I am going to use this compressor. I'm going to use a very, very low ratio. I'm going to have the slowest attack and the fastest release to kind of make this pump and breathe. And on this meter, I'm going to aim for 1/4 of a dB to even 1/2 a dB. Not even get up to 1 dB of gain reduction, because there's already a lot of compression happening on this entire mix. So this is just going to bring things in, make it breathe a little bit, and then we'll dive into the dynamic section here to increase the level. Alright, so let's talk about this a little bit. So you could hear that this compressor is just tightening everything up once again, gluing things together, not even really making that much of a gain reduction, but it's, to me, this compressor is just perfect for mastering because it's not adding any color, but it makes it just sound better. I don't know how else to describe it. Just it just works. And like I said, not even a half a dB of compression here. So I love this. You don't always need to use this compressor when you're using this plugin, but I use it most of the time. Most of the time. So moving on to the leveler here. I always start with this dynamic perception because to me it does exactly what the name is. It helps you have a sense of dynamics. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It's really hard to describe what this does, but you can hear it when you adjust this. It makes it sound like there's some quiet parts as well as loud parts. And that's something that is lost with your traditional limiters sometimes is you kill your dynamics because what a limiter does is it chops off the peaks and then brings the low sounds up. Low level sounds, I should say. So it brings up the volume of the quiet stuff and then cuts off the peaks. So it's kind of just squashing it. And this helps deal with that issue. Then something else that happens with traditional limiters is you lose some of your low end, in particular your kick drum, and then you lose some of your high end information, like your snare, like the crack of a snare. So I always dial in the dynamic perception and then the transient information of the low end and high end, just to get the bass guitar and kick drum sounding nice, and then to hear that snare, which in this track is very, very important. That rim click is really, it's very important to this track. And then I go to the gain here, and I aim for about -10 RMS level, which the ceiling is set to -0.1 peak, which is your dBFS that is reading here on your standard meter. So when I disengage this constant gain monitoring, it's going to go from like -9, which is I think it was what it was at, up to -0.1. And it won't go above that ceiling. But the RMS level is what you're really looking for here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play just from where we're at here. I'm going to play the track. I'm going to disengage the entire chain, bring it in and out, and then at the end I'm going to disengage this constant gain monitoring and play the whole track start to finish for you. And I think you're going to need to turn your speakers down because this is going to be a huge, huge volume difference. So let's listen to that. So everything is just much more rounded and glued together. The low end is more tame, but also is fatter at the same time. Everything is just cleaner. So the thing about mastering is it's a very, very subtle thing, but all these little subtle things add up to a big, a bigger picture, so to speak. So I just now disengaged the constant gain monitoring, excuse me, and you may want to turn your speakers down now a little bit, and we're going to just listen to the whole thing start to finish, and you're going to hear that this thing is loud now, and it's going to be a very, in my opinion, it's going to be something that's very easy to tell that this has been mastered. So let's go ahead and listen to this thing start to finish. We'll have a few final words and then we'll call it a day. So there you go. There is Arise Run 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 mastered. So it's not perfect. There's some things that I hear now that could have been changed in the mix down. But even then, it wouldn't be perfect because that bass guitar, man, it has some clipping in there. And I don't have something like Isotope RX Declipper to fix that. So there's really nothing I can do about that. I could just try and make it sound as best as I could. And yeah, that's really there's not much more I could do about that. So just going over clean things up and maybe get a little bit of separation from the sides and center. Get rid of any noise if you have it. Usually use some sort of compression, multiband or regular, doesn't matter. That's something that you have to decide on a song by song basis. Some sort of imaging can generally help you out, even if it's just a stereo imager to widen things up. That is, if it needs that. That's the thing is, you don't always need all of these things. Tape machine just brings it to life, but it doesn't need to be a tape machine, just some sort of harmonic saturation of some sort. This is just more for color, really. And then some sort of limiter or leveler plugin. And my absolute favorite is Slate Digital FGX. And that will bring you up to commercial levels. So, I hope you learned something from this video. I hope that this was informative for you. Once again, I'm not a mastering engineer, but I try my best. I have a little bit of a grip on it, but like I said, usually I don't master things that I've mixed myself. So this is sort of something different for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you didn't, you can give it a dislike. That's okay. You're entitled to your opinion, as I always say. If you really like this video, please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.